Wherever there are shadows, there are people ready to kick at the darkness until it bleeds daylight. This is Bleeding Daylight with your host, Rodney Olson.
Welcome to Bleeding Daylight. Thanks for being here. A full library of episodes is waiting for you at bleedingdaylight.net. You'll also find all our social media links there. Join the conversation. Follow Bleeding Daylight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube. I'd love to connect with you. What happens when a father refuses to give up on his daughter, even when the world tells him he should? Today's guest has spent decades putting other people's stories into words, but this time the story he's telling is very personal and part of the healing journey for his daughter and himself. I'll introduce you in just a moment. My guest today has been putting words to paper since the mid-1960s. Robert Ruesch is an award-winning author, speaker and humourist whose work has appeared in various newspapers and magazines. He's written everything from Elizabethan-style plays to a children's Christmas book, and he spent over 2 decades helping other writers find their voice. Perhaps his most powerful work is his book, The Long Road Home, co-written with his daughter Jennifer, a raw, unflinching memoir about her 30-year battle with addiction and a father's unwavering love and faith through all of it. Robert, welcome to Bleeding Daylight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Rodney.
You've said that you grew up in a resort world of opportunity. It sounds like an idyllic upbringing. Tell me about those early years for you.
I grew up in a place called Estes Park at a resort called the YMCA, the Rockies. Now, let me stop there because when you hear YMCA, you think about a whole bunch of guys running around in Speedos looking for the wading pool. This is not the case. This is the largest YMCA in the world with over 200 cabins, almost 300 cabins from 2 to 6 bedrooms, 11 lodges. They feed anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 people per meal per day, and conferences. It was a large camp that I grew up at, and it was kind of like a ho-hum day every day in paradise.
What was the vista that you woke up to each morning?
Well, there were 3 ladies that I woke up to, Chavin, Chiquita, and Ypsilon, the 3 mountains. Ypsilon having actually a snow outline of a Y in the mountain that you could see from the main deck of the administration building. That was kind of my wake-up call every single day, just to see those beautiful mountains. They're at a 13,000-foot range that you could actually hike all 3 in one day if you wanted, just going over the top to each of them.
And I know that you've written a book specifically about that growing up experience and that setting. It must have been something that started some inspiration for you and even began your writing journey.
It did. Growing up as a child around college students, professors that came there, blue-collar workers, white-collar workers, people like Dr. Drucker, who wrote Management by Objectives. Being around those people, being around people like Michael W. Smith when I was an adult, really shaped my desire to write, to see them come together in the summer as a summer staff and leave at the end of the summer. Some of them engaged, some of them to be engaged, and some of them to never see each other ever again. So it was quite an experience from all 50 states, including several different foreign countries that were there for summer work or recreation or conferences.
Quite a remarkable opportunity. What was it that sparked you to write, and what were the first pieces that you began to write back in those years?
I actually started writing or realized that I really wanted to be a writer at the last day of school in 7th grade. The school bully caught me outside the school and pounded me into the grass. And as I was laying in the grass, my mouth bleeding, I could hear my writer's voice say, and he felt the salty taste of blood as his life was ebbing from him. And I decided maybe this is not the time to think about that, but the time to run. And that's when I recognized that I really wanted to write. I wanted to impact people with stories, real stories of what happened to individuals and how that impacted not only their lives, but the lives around them and possibly even the world.
When did you feel comfortable to start sharing some of the things that you'd written with people outside your family, for instance?
That's a good question. I've always been an observer. and I've always watched people. And seeing the interaction between adults, parents, children, parents, strangers that didn't know each other, that were strangers on a train, essentially, just always fascinated me to see what they were like. And I wanted to be able to put that pen to paper and make that pen to purpose so that I could share what I had seen and what I had felt for others who may just simply walk on by and not realize the interaction of two individuals or a group of individuals, that there was something there more than just a brief walk by, that there was communication, there was feeling, there was desire, there sometimes even instant friendships were started. And I wanted to be able to place that on paper somehow. And so during my high school years, I would just kind of write things down and enjoyed doing that. But I also enjoyed traveling. And so as I traveled, I would write. In college, taking a creative writing course, that lit the fire. That's when the match hit literally the gunpowder of writing for me.
What were the first writings that you put out there to the big wide world? What were the first steps that you took to actually go into publishing?
When I was in a Christian college up in South Dakota, they were putting out a small literary pamphlet book. And so I submitted a poem to it just for the fun of it. And I can't even really remember the poem. All of a sudden, it was admitted to be published as the last page in the book. Basically, the back matter of the book had the poem, which I thought was just a great place to be. And then I realized that God had given me this talent. God had said, this is what you need to do, whether it's writing a book, writing an article, a description of a program that is being offered for somebody, writing a letter for an individual in the services when I was in the armed services so that they could send home. It was a pen to purpose that I needed to do. So that's when I recognized I wanted to be a writer. And that was a long trip. I really couldn't sustain myself as a writer, but I had to have other jobs that allowed me to write within that job. And that's how I sustained my writing.
You mentioned that writing is a gift, a skill that God had given you. Oftentimes, the gifts that we have, they're the things that come naturally to us, and then suddenly at some point we realize that not everyone has that gift or skill. When did you realize that this was something different about you, something that you could do that most people didn't have the skill or the talent to do, that this was truly something that God had put into you?
When I wrote something originally, especially in college, I would share it not with my creative writing class, but my roommate or a friend, and I would see the reaction on their face and feel the emotion from what they were reading. Then I realized that I was touching their heart ever so gently and nudging their soul toward what I was wanting them to hear, to realize through my writing. That's when I realized that, yes, I have a talent. God has given me this talent, whether it's to write a sermon, write a devotion, write a speech for an individual, or write something for myself. And that talent needed to be, must be, and would be used as a writer. That's what God's called me to do.
And you're quoted as saying that when you're writing, you do feel God's presence. Tell me about that.
Before I start writing anytime, even before talking to you today, I open my heart to prayer and say, okay, God, how am I going to honor you? How do you want me to honor you? Your will be done. These are your words through my mouth. These are your words through my fingers to the computer, to the printed page, to the eyes of the reader. So I open up that way and say, God, guide me. Do not allow me to get ahead of you. If you want me to walk beside you, that is fine. If you would need me to walk behind you, that is okay. But you forge the path. I will write about the path.
When did you come to the decision to write about the difficult road that you had travelled with your daughter? When did you decide to write The Long Road Home?
She had overdosed, literally had quit breathing because of overdose of meth and fentanyl. Had it not been for her narcissistic boyfriend and they being in the waiting room of the emergency room, she would have died. I went down to see her, spent time with her in ICU, came back home, went down later after 6 weeks of rehab, and in the car on the way home, the trip from Texas to Colorado, she was an open book. And I heard God say to me, "You need to write The Long Road Home." And I said, "I do not think I can do it, Lord. This is way, way beyond my writing skills." And he said, "Trust me. Trust me. I will tell you and I will help you. I will lead you through it." I listened to God's word and placed the chapters and the words down that he suggested that I do. That was when I decided it, just on the road home when we had windshield time.
It can often be difficult to write a memoir like that because it goes back to painful memories. And obviously we want it to tell the story of recovery of that battle. But at the same time, it does uncover some of the most painful times. And this is a battle that lasted for decades. Was that difficult for you to have to go back and revisit that, or for your daughter, Jennifer?
Absolutely. I had to take off my father's hat, put on my journalistic hat, compartmentalize my emotions, and ask the hard, the tough questions, and then ask them again a different way. But I can tell you, Rodney, during that time, it was therapeutic not only for me, but for Jennifer to go over the things that happened, to see where God's hand of protection, his wings of love and glory just held on to her during all those difficult circumstances, and to be able to just to see the book come together because of what she shared and was willingly open shared to peel the onion emotionally down to the core. One chapter is called Lives Lost. That's about the 2 abortions she's had. And I asked her a very direct question. What was it like to lay back on that table, to hear that suction machine go on, and to know what was happening? And she paused, talked about it, we cried about it, and then we wrote about it. It was a healing time, I believe, not only for her, but for me, and hopefully for others who read it, who understand that the consequences and actions come together sometimes and they collide. There's this emotional or physical explosion that happens. And we had long talks about it. We actually became closer as a father and daughter than we ever had before.
There's obviously a closeness that has grown between the two of you. There's the telling of a story, being able to go back over that old ground and seek healing. But as God called you to write the book, what do you think was the main purpose behind it? What was the main thing that he wanted you to achieve by writing the book together with Jennifer?
I believe he wanted us to be able to allow other people to realize that there's a lot of people in the same boat and it's not the Titanic. That there are addicts out there that feel things are hopeless, but yet they're not. That there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not the train coming down the tunnel towards you, but it's his light, his grace, his mercy. God was wanting us to write the book to tell people there is hope. There is always hope. There's always a recovery that can come. Addicts are always recovering. They've never recovered. And that's important for them to realize. And we tried to display that in the book, that each day is another day of recovery. Each day is another day of success. Each day you have gone from a victim to victor. And each day you have control over your life if you allow God to have that control first.
As well as that recovery that is continuing, is there a grieving that Jennifer has for the years that have been lost?
Deep, deep grieving. Mother's Day is very, very tough for her. She had a son, and the son is estranged, and Mother's Day is very, very difficult. It's amazing how God works, because there's no coincidence in God's world. It was hard for her, and it still is, for her to forgive herself. For the last 6 weeks, our pastor has been talking about Joseph and the forgiveness that he gave to his brothers. And it has hit Jennifer in spades, emotional spades, as she realizes that she has to forgive not only herself, but her mom from leaving her when she was a child of 6 years old. Because Jenny came home from school one day and said, "Where's Mom?" And I said, "Mom's gone. She's left us." And to have that type of grief over her life, not only once, but twice, but 3 or 4 times, and to realize that she thought she was worthless, but now realizes her self-worth is so positive. She had to learn to forgive. And I had to learn to forgive too. It's been a challenge, a struggle, and a blessing for both of us to go on this journey together.
As you've looked back over the years and looked at that entire journey, what was the low point of it? Was it when Jennifer first turned to substances, or was it that day in the hospital when she had overdosed? Was there something else that really became the low point that God had taken her back from?
I didn't know that she had turned to substances. She was 14, living with her stepdad and her mom. Things happened there that were just absolutely unacceptable, and she started drinking. I didn't know that she had an alcoholic problem until she was 21. She hid it so well. She would come and visit us, and things were fine. But she had decided to turn to substances, either alcohol or drugs, to numb the hurt. And so over the years, it just continued to develop. The low points were just all the time. I would call when she was living in Florida at the time, and there was no answer on her phone. I didn't know if she was alive or dead, or if she had been assaulted and she was in a gutter somewhere. I didn't know it. And I can tell you that my wife would just see me go through emotional heck because there was no information out there. And then when she would call, it was like, "Hello, how are you?" Just almost a verbal main line when it comes to an emotional EKG. There was just nothing there. Over the years, I just watched this train wreck continue to go down the tracks. I've watched her in rehab after rehab after rehab not take any of it in and just dig her heels into it. She came to live with us at one time once we got her out of a situation. She was on drugs, and we had to make the hard decision that she couldn't live with us. It could not happen. And we told her that she had to move out, but she had an opportunity to go into Teen Challenge. She said she wouldn't go. But I said, "Well, it's either a Teen Challenge or out the door, one of the two. Both of them never really happened." She called all her friends. None of them would take her in. So she agreed to go to Teen Challenge. And that's when things started turning around. But yet, drugs and alcohol addictions are claws with barbs on them. She was so hooked that she couldn't get it, even in a positive program like Teen Challenge that has a high rate of people being successful. She didn't fail. She just fell off the wagon time and time again because she had such a low opinion of herself, and the addiction was so deep within her.
God was obviously striving with Jennifer this whole time and calling her to himself, wanting to speak her true value into her. But when was it that she finally started to hear God's call? When was it that she finally started to hear what he was saying about who she was and that there was the possibility of turning things around?
She was a buffet Christian. She accepted Christ in 8th grade, but she wasn't eating the whole meal. She was just grabbing a little piece of dessert here and then leaving the table. But over time, she could see eventually that God had protected her. While in Teen Challenge, the director of the women's ministry took her under her wing. But then after she got out of Teen Challenge, she ended up getting federal charges against her for drugs and ended up in federal prison. And I think this is when it started, that she realized that there are no coincidences in God's world. As she was given her bunkie assignment, she talked to the gal in that room, and the gal and her started finding out that this gal, her bunkie, was a good friend of the director of Teen Challenge where she was at. And so that bunkie put the word out to leave Jennifer alone. Several weeks later, Jennifer was transferred in to a psych ward for analysis. 3 months later, she came back, got the same bunkie. Now, how does that happen? How do you get the same roommate? And I think she started realizing that there are no coincidences. From there, she got transferred into the federal hospital prison because of her multiple sclerosis. Her roommate there was the alpha woman of that floor, and she told everybody, leave Jennifer alone. Her nickname was Red, and it wasn't because of her hair. It was because that she was in there for some very serious first-class felony charges, and you can imagine which. But she started to see that God's protection was there constantly. When she huffed and fell and should have just really injured herself at one time, she didn't get that badly injured. But because of that, God used those terrible circumstances to continue to tell her, I am here, I am with you, I am beside you. Come to me. I will be your refuge. I will be your strength. And I think that's when she started to realize that God was with her. When she had the near-death experience and she turned blue, it took 4 doses of Narcan to start to bring her back. And I think she realized that the next time drugs would kill her, that it would be over. And it should have been this time, except her narcissistic boyfriend got her into an emergency room, into the waiting room. And that's the only reason she's alive today. That's not a coincidence. When she came up here, all of a sudden, she opened her heart and started to realize that God loved her and she could love herself. And once she started that, and she goes to church with us up here, once she started down that journey, the path that was so rough, that was difficult to walk, became an easy trail for her to wander on. She has just grown. She was a seed for a flower, but now she's starting to become a whole garden. Sometimes she has to work on Sunday, but she works it out so she can go to the early service because that's important to her. She has learned the loving, abiding, eternal presence of our Lord Jesus Christ in her life. And each day is just another positive step forward for her. So the turning point came right when she quit breathing, right when she started turning blue. And that's when she realized that God was with her.
You've mentioned that someone who's been caught in the grips of addiction is constantly in recovery. There's no time when you can say they've recovered. And I suspect that the same for Jennifer is with her healing journey, that continues to go on, that her heart continues to be healed as she draws closer to God and further away from that time of addiction. But what about for you? I imagine that your healing from all of this continues even till this day as well.
I am. I was very angry at God because of the circumstances that Jenny was put into, and some of them I helped create, and I had to learn to forgive myself. My healing started coming when Jenny started healing. When we both started reading the Bible together, and we started sitting in church together, we were singing hymns together. We would talk about things after church. My healing started when I saw that she could learn to love herself. Being adopted, I wanted her to know her mom, and that's when the difficulty started, when she went to live with her mom and her stepdad. I have, for years, never forgiven myself for that. But now I can see that God uses these terrible, terrible, destructive circumstances for his glory. And because of that, we were able to write the book, The Long Road Home. Because of that, we were able to take that book and both of us put it into an Audible book, which was difficult for us to do, but yet it gave us what I call closet therapy, because we used my walk-in closet as a studio to do the book. Those times together in there, changing the chapters and revisiting what we had written, started to heal my soul at the same time. I can just see the forgiveness on both of our parts and the forgiveness for each other, and her anger against me remarrying my high school sweetheart when she was just wanted me desperately to be her only focus in life. That healing is progressing. Because of that, that heals me too, because both Barb and I, as husband and wife, had a lot of difficulties because of Jennifer's turmoil. She was the boulder that would be dropped into a puddle. It wasn't the grain of sand or small rock that hit the puddle. It was the boulder that caused emotional strife for us. And yet Barb stood there with me and worked with me through this whole time and worked with Jennifer. Difficult as it was a lot of times running across boiling water.
Have there been people who've had the opportunity to read The Long Road Home who have come back to you and said that that's been part of their recovery and their healing?
Yes. There was a hostess in one of the local restaurants here that I would go to have men's prayer breakfast with, and gave her a book. And 2 weeks later, I went to breakfast there, and she came up with me, gave me a big hug and tears in her eyes, and she said, "You have told my story." I've given bookmarks to people, and they have said, "I got to read this. My family's going through this." It's amazing the amount of people that are held in the clutches of addiction. It's almost a silent killer for people that we don't realize how desperate people are. I mean, you can look at San Francisco and Atlanta and in New York City and other cities and see the homeless, and yes, they're living on the streets, and yes, they have a drug problem. You see that. But when it comes to middle class society, or even upper class society or lower class, a lot of times you don't see it. It is so well hidden and so well buried that you do not understand until that person sometimes has taken their last breath and entered into eternity. I've had people come up to me and said, "This is my story. I cannot believe that you wrote it." I had one individual say, "This book should be in every junior high and high school and should be required reading," which humbled me that they would say that.
Your book is obviously about that journey for Jennifer of coming through addiction, of substance abuse. But there are various kinds of addictions that people face in their life. It may not be substance abuse. Is The Long Road Home going to be helpful for them to see similar patterns and to be able to emerge from that, knowing God's love for them?
I think it is, because it's just not only drug or alcohol addiction. All of us have some type of addiction, whether it's codependency, whether it's you just want to eat chocolate all day long. People can recognize that there is an addictive behavior in their life. They can see that there is a way to get out of it. So yeah, besides just the drugs and alcohol, which are the two main forces that are out there, there's addiction to anger. People have addiction to trauma. I watched it a couple days ago. A person was making a U-turn in the road, and the car behind him wanted to make a regular turn, and they both got into a little bit of a fuss. To me, that's anger. That's an addiction. If people can see that, not just from the drugs and the alcohol, but it's a bunch of dominoes that are falling constantly, and you can't stop it until you take a few dominoes out of the way, and then that stops, and that's when you start the recovering process for an individual.
Robert, I have a link to your website so that people can find your range of writings. They can find your books. They can also find the articles that you write and put there. The link is in the show notes at bleedingdaylight.net. What is on the agenda for writing next for you? After coming up with this amazing book that tells a very personal story, what have you turned your hand to now?
I really don't know where God wants me to lead on this. I believe He wants me to share our story with individuals, with groups that are addressing addiction, like Celebrate Recovery, which is an international program, churches that have self-help groups that are together. I think that's where it goes. I really believe the first 3 books that I wrote were just training to write the 4th. God has not given me what the 4th book is, except to be writing right now about Jennifer's journey and her continued recovering. Recovery always isn't recovering. Just because the substance is gone, it doesn't mean that the thinking is. Some of the harsh realities of recovery, realizing that sobriety and recovery are not the same thing. It's possible to put down a drink, stop using drugs, but still think like the person who picked it up. Even after stopping use, individuals continue the experience of some negative emotions, behaviors, fear, resentment, selfishness, an unhealthy coping strategy that drove them to whatever that addiction is. That's the hard truth. But it's an important one because addiction isn't always just about the substance. It's about thinking. And it's about obsession. It's about the constant search for comfort, as in Jennifer would say, to dull the hurt. It's about wanting immediate relief from uncomfortable feelings that you have day in and day out. It's about trying to control everything that's around us, especially when we cannot. It's about wanting life to happen on our terms. I've met people who have been 20 years sober who still have that addictive feeling. I have a friend of mine that's 35 years sober that has that feeling. I've met people 6 months sober who are actively doing the work to change the way they think and live and to respond to life. The difference isn't the amount of clean time. The difference is the amount of willingness to grow. Because if we're honest, the addict's mind always wants more attention, validation, control, comfort, certainty, more of whatever makes us you feel better right now. And there are moments when Jennifer's mind wants immediate results. There are still moments when you want to control the outcome that is there. Moments when fear tries to decide something for you. The old thinking patterns will try to resurface. The difference today is that you're going to recognize them. Jennifer's going to challenge them. She's going to pray about them. I'm going to pray with her about them to a God that listens and understands, to talk to them, to her counselor, pastor, best friend. She's in the driver's seat now, and she's keeping her life between the lines. Recovery isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware. It's about catching yourself when old patterns try to reappear. It's about recognizing when your thinking is drifting back toward the mindset that nearly distorted your life. Rodney, the older I get, the more I realize that recovery isn't something that is easily achieved. Recovery is something that continues to need practiced every day, one day at a time, one moment at a time. Because the goal is never just to quit drinking or using. The goal is to become a healthier human being. And trust me, that's a journey that lasts far longer than putting down any substance. That's where Jennifer is right now.
As I mentioned, there's links in the show notes at bleedingdaylight.net so that people can find your writings and especially find that book, The Long Road Home. Robert, I just want to say thank you for what you've done for Jennifer and for other people by putting that down in print. And thank you especially for spending some time with us today on Bleeding Daylight.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you for listening to Bleeding Daylight. Please help us to shine more light into the darkness by sharing this episode with others. For further details and more episodes, please visit bleedingdaylight.net.